There's no visual presentation today, so I understand if you just want to listen in. It's up to you. But welcome to the New Year, New You call. It is Sunday, January 25th, and this is going to be the first call that we do that's not actually life skills. You know, we started this off. We've had the last couple weeks. I think we had our first kickoff call, and then we did our time blocking. And then last week I was out of town, so I had you guys listen in on something else. One of my favorite personal development teachers and philosophers. However, this year I'm going to share a little bit of my story with you. And the reason why isn't because I think I'm some important person. It's because I think that we're more alike than we are different. And I think that we can learn a little bit when we hear of other people's stories. And also, what I am learning is as I have gone further and further into my wellness journey, that not as many people know where I started. And I think that's interesting and important for us to share our stories because so many people just make the assumption that we see someone, so I'm going to use myself particularly, posted all over Facebook in their bikini doing yoga postures, and you assume that that's the package that they've always come in. And that's not the case. And so I feel like through me allowing myself to become more vulnerable with each of you, it will allow you to open your heart a little bit more to sharing a little bit of more of yourself, not only with me, but with those around you. And whenever we become more real and more vulnerable is when true connections really happen and when real transformation can be made. So we're going to start out tonight, and I'm calling this talk, Everything is Connected. So let's rewind to Aubrey in high school. So Aubrey in high school always thought that she was some big, fat, overweight girl. And looking back now and over my life's time, I've realized that I had something, and maybe still a little bit to this day, something called dysmorphia. And if you haven't heard of dysmorphia, dysmorphia is actually an eating disorder, but it's not where you are anorexic or bulimic. Specifically, it's when people are dysmorphic, it usually means that they bounce between eating disorders. Like you hear that they're maybe at one point they're starving themselves, and maybe the next time they're trying to throw themselves up, or maybe they are binge eating. And I primarily would go back and forth between binge eating and starvation. Also did a lot of diet pills. I started buying Dexatrim and hiding it from my mother when I was 12 years old. And what dysmorphia actually is it means that when you look in the mirror, you see something different than what's actually there. So when I looked in the mirror, all I saw was the cellulite on my thighs, the muffin top that was hanging over my pants and so on, because I was never the most lean person. I was never an athlete, but I wasn't nearly as big as I thought I was. So the reason why I'm sharing that term with you as far as dysmorphia is concerned is I'm realizing that there's a lot of people, especially women, who fall into that category, who see themselves as one thing, where everybody else sees them as what they really are and who they truly are. It's not actually some misinterpreted image of themselves. So whenever you meet people along their journey and you think, man, why can't they ever be satisfied with the way they look? They look great. They might actually be suffering from dysmorphia, and bringing that to their awareness, or introducing that term to them, might be something that is awakening in order to help with their transformation. So just at the beginning, that's kind of a side note. So I went to college, and I wasn't an athlete, and so I really didn't have any sort of exercise routine that I adhered to. I always did like doing workout videos from home, but it was something that I did primarily as a means to combat my poor body image, not necessarily because I enjoyed working out. So I went to college, and I had a girlfriend who was a string bean and who ate whatever she wanted. And generally speaking, more nights than not during school, um, she would have a pint of ice cream for dinner. And she was my best friend, and I joined her. And so that freshman year at TCU, I put on 30 pounds. So I went, and I was already probably about 20 pounds overweight going into college. So not huge, but but not the healthiest I could be either. So at the end of my sophomore year, I'm just going to talk pounds, and I know the pounds aren't necessarily that what matters, but just to give you a frame of reference, I'm about 5'9", 5'10", and my happy weight, where I feel really good about myself, is about 135, and that's where I am right now. And when I went to college, I was about 150, and by the end of my sophomore year, the heaviest I ever saw the scale go was 180. And I never really paid that much attention to what I was eating. I realized I had never taken a nutrition class. I didn't realize that when I was in college, but I had never taken a nutrition class. So what I was putting into my body was definitely not the healthiest. I was eating out of the cafeteria at TCU, chicken strips and mashed potatoes um, and white gravy was my meal almost every day at lunch. So then, um, fast forward a year later, I moved out of the dorms, and that year was the first year in my entire life that I was responsible for what I was putting into my body. Now, I wasn't really mindful, but what that meant was I was buying my own food. I didn't have a meal plan on campus anymore. I was fixing my own food and shopping. I also decided, well, I was a lifeguard at the pool on campus because I had been for a couple years. So I started swimming maybe 2 or 3 times a week, just because. And that year I lost 20 pounds without without really even trying. Okay. Um, so I decided I wanted to continue with my weight loss journey, and I fell back to my old habits. I decided I was gonna get thin um, for my senior year, and so I started taking Metabolife. I don't know if you remember Metabolife, but Metabolife is now illegal. It was a diet pill, right? And I was taking Metabolife to its maximum dosage, which was, I think, 3 or 4 pills a day. Something, no, I think it was 6 pills a day. It was like 2 pills before every meal. So I was taking 6 pills a day. And basically, I was on crack. I mean, I was on speed. And so I was doing a lot of things the wrong way. I was also in an abusive relationship. And this is the kicker for me. You want to know why I started exercising regularly and what really was my catalyst for being devoted to exercise? And that was the breakup. I was in an abusive relationship, and when I say abusive, um, I never saw it as abusive because he didn't hit me. He was very emotional and mentally abusive. Was always just really not nice and mean. And because I didn't feel great about myself already, I took it. And the night that I left was for good was the night that it would have become physically abusive, and I knew it. Um, Him and I got into a fight, and he literally slammed me up against the wall and punched the wall right next to my head. And I can't remember if it dented the wall, if it broke the wall. He did that quite regularly. So whether that was the time, but what I remember was his fist hitting the wall next to my head and me slumping to the floor in a ball of tears, and called my parents on the phone the next day and told them that I didn't love myself anymore and that I didn't know what to do. And that next day, an angel spoke to me. And I truly believe in the pit of my beings that God or the universe or whatever you want to call that divine energy that connects us all speaks through people at times. And this woman, her name was Cece, definitely was my angel that day. And Cece and I were in the same department in school, and she knew my ex. And she had heard of the breakup. She didn't know the details, but she literally pulled me aside and said, Aubrey, I heard about what happened, and I want to share something with you. I said, okay. She's like, I don't know if you know this or not, but I see a psychiatrist for depression on a regular basis. And my psychiatrist taught me that it's physically impossible to be depressed if you're exercising. It's physically impossible to be depressed when you're exercising. She said, so I would recommend that you start and see if it helps. And so I did. And those 2 days a week that I'd been kind of swimming, I changed it to 5. And I started swimming almost every day. And those endorphins that came in literally saved my life. She saved my life that year by just sharing that with me. And so that's where it began. And don't get me wrong, I was still on Metabolife and I was still taking diet pills. And I slowly started to come off of them. But if you ever took Metabolife, you know how speedy it was, right? And I'll never forget the day that I got off Metabolife and I was drinking a Red Bull. And I drank 2 or 3 Red Bulls in a row and still felt like I was going to pass out from exhaustion. So that showed the amount of speed that was in my body during that point in time, right? So up until then, I mean, I was probably about, I think I was 140, 142. So I'd lost pretty much all of my weight, but I was at that point where I was like what I call skinny fat, right? Where I didn't have all that extra that I used to, but my body really hadn't transformed. It was starting to because I was swimming, but not that much had changed. And so fast forward to, I meet Jacob, my husband, who was my my fiance or my boyfriend at the time. And Jacob had been overweight too, and he lost weight right before we met, but he also did it the unhealthy way. He didn't take diet pills; he used Slim Fast. So we've all heard of Slim Fast, right? Shake for breakfast, shake for lunch, and then a sensible dinner. Well, he introduced me to that, and I joined in with him, and I started doing it with him. And I don't know if you've ever read the nutrition label on Slim Fast, but it has, I think, close to 25 grams of sugar, which is, I think you're supposed to maybe have 30 grams in a full day. So 5 grams of sugar less than what you're supposed to have an entire day. Um, and I did the Slim Fast plan for about a year. Well, fast forward to chronic bladder infections in college. I had a bladder infection that wouldn't go away for a year. And I was in severe pain, crying a lot, and so on. And it was a big worry to Jacob, my new fiance, who, and to my parents, because I was coming off of their insurance. And I literally spent almost a year on antibiotics because the doctor couldn't figure out what was causing all of this pain in my body. And I got tired. I got fed up. Every time I'd go back to the doctor, they'd put me on more antibiotics, and I knew that that wasn't the answer, because it obviously wasn't, because I hadn't gotten any better after a year of it. So Jacob had been seeing a chiropractor that he heard was also an acupuncturist and a naturally healing doctor. He's just Chinese medicine. So Jacob was like, well, why don't you just come check this guy out? Why don't you come check it out? and maybe you can get some acupressure. I was scared of acupuncture at the time. Maybe you could get some acupressure, and maybe that will help. Anything is better than where you are right now. And I went in and saw Dr. Lee, and Dr. Lee changed my life, because maybe Dr. Lee was one of my angels in that time too. Because after being on antibiotics for a year and seeing doctors for a year, no one had asked me the simple question of, Aubrey, what are you putting into your body, and what's going on in your personal life right now? No one had asked me that question. And the honest answer was, I've been addicted to diet pills on and off since I was 12 years old, and very severely the year before that. I had been loading my body with sugar and doing caloric reduction, and pretty much without knowing it, Dr. Lee told me that I have an imbalance in my second chakra, which I'm not going into chakras tonight. It's not a yoga lesson for us tonight, but just to give you the easy version is the chakras is the energy systems in the body in yogic philosophy. And basically, he told me that I have an imbalance in my pelvic center and that I needed to start practicing yoga. And that was his only prescription. I had had doctors having me on antibiotics for a year, and all of his prescription was, oh, let me take that back. He said, you need to stop drinking Slim Fast and you need to start practicing yoga, because I was still drinking Slim Fast at that time. And so I did, and I started practicing yoga. And because I didn't understand it at the time, how the body is all connected, and how we put one thing in our body and it affects the whole. But pretty much the diet pills and the Slim Fast, primarily the diet pills, had done a major damage to my kidneys, which affects your bladder and all of your urinary tract. And so I was suffering severe pain, not because there was a quote unquote infection, but because there were just so many chemicals in my body that my body was trying to process through, and that they wasn't having any luck doing. And so I obviously got off all of that. And after 6 months of practicing yoga twice a week, I was off all of my antibiotics. My pain was gone. My symptoms seemed to be completely alleviated. And I had also was off my asthma medications that I had been on since I was a youth, all from just yoga twice a week, 6 months out of the year. So you think that yoga would have healed it all, right? You think yoga would have healed it all. And it did mostly. However, I hadn't really at that point yet dealt with my dysmorphia. I mean, yoga definitely surely helped along the way, but it wasn't instantaneous like the rest was. And so I was still doing caloric reduction. I wasn't doing Slim Fast anymore, but I just bounced to a different supplement line. So I was doing metrics. I've been a supplement junkie for years, and so I never thought I would drink Shakeology or do anything like that again. But anyway, so I was still a supplement junkie and addict, even though I was practicing yoga and I was off Slim Fast, so I wasn't doing the high sugary stuff anymore. But that 1 year, I literally gained 20 pounds. Went from probably, well, let me rewind. Before our wedding, I got down to 128, I think was my lowest. And that was when I was still doing Slim Fast, and I was just really, really unhealthy. And I got back up to like almost 150, and couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. And so I sat down one day and I literally added up all of my calories and realized that I had been living off about 750 calories a day for a year or so. And so what had happened was my body went catatonic. not catatonic, I'm sorry, went into ketosis. So what's ketosis? It's when the body thinks you're anorexic and it refuses to let go of fat because it doesn't know when your next meal is going to come in. It doesn't know when you're going to eat again. So it literally stores it all. And so my body had gone into ketosis because my body thought I was anorexic. So let me rewind. I was living off 750 calories a day during the week, but then during the weekends, I would do what everybody else does, and I would drink and I would have my cheat days. It wasn't cheat meal back then, it was a cheat day. Like Sunday, I ate anything I wanted and drink anything I wanted all weekend. So I would like dump toxins into my body on the weekend, and so my body would absorb it all because it was scared to death of what was going to happen during the week. I wasn't going to put any more calories in my body during the week. So my body wouldn't let go of what I was putting in. So the main point of this story, as you can see here, is that it's all connected. What we put in our system affects everything in our system. So let me give you one other quick story of my body on Slim Fast, the best way to describe it. Whenever I was in the 5th grade, we did an experiment where we had 2 mice, and in one aquarium was one mouse that we fed all fruits and vegetables, fresh, healthy fruits and vegetables. And the other mouse, we fed only scraps from our cafeteria at school, which is really disturbing because that's what they feed our youth, right? But all scraps from the school. After a month's time, the rat that was fed all fresh fruits and vegetables had this beautiful, lustrous coat, and it just looked healthy. And the rat who'd been fed all scraps from the cafeteria literally looked like a drug addict. I mean, when you think of quote unquote drug addicts from the movies or whatever, maybe you've known some in your personal life, it's like their skin looks gross and their hair falls out and gets ratty and looks bristly and coarse, like you can really see it in people's hair when they're healthy or not. And literally that mouse, the rat's eyes was beady and bugging out, like literally his skin had pulled back around his eyes to where it looked like his eyes were popping out. And I'll never forget a week or 2, maybe it was a month before my wedding. And this is when I was still on Slim Fast and mom begging me not to lose any more weight. And she was playing with my hair, and hair fell out in her hand. And then all of a sudden I had an epiphany as, oh my gosh, I am the beady-eyed rat. I'm the beady-eyed rat. The beady-eyed rat. So the reason why I share all this with you guys is to prove to you I didn't wake up a nutritional expert. I didn't wake up a fitness expert. I wasn't born with these skills. These weren't things that were given to me. It's called I've screwed up a lot. I've screwed up on my body, and it's been a learning experience and a playing ground. And that's why it's so important when we learn to teach and to share it with others. Because when we're at our best, we're all teachers. That's a quote from Maya Angelou. So as you can see, I've taken all of you on as your coach to help guide you and help lead you along this path of wellness. But this has been a learning experiment for me along the way too. This whole journey we call life has been an experiment. And so I'm sharing this with you today because my mantra for my company is the Gandhi quote of be the change you want to see in the world. So as all of you right now, or maybe you're just starting your journey, Maybe you've been well on your way. My point is there have been little things you've learned that maybe you take for granted now, that maybe there's someone else in your life who's making the same mistakes you've made before, and that you can help pay it forward to them and share with them the mistakes that you've made. And so maybe they can see a little bit of themselves in you and listen to what you have to say as far as the guidance and the wisdom and the experience that you can share. And after all of my experience, I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would ever be working for a company or with a company that I was selling and promoting wellness products and supplements whenever I was a supplement junkie for so long. But the difference is it's called quality, and it's called reading nutrition labels, and it's called knowing what's in your food. And right when someone introduced me to Shakeology, I was like, no way, I'm not doing this again. I'm not doing this again. But then I read the label and started to realize that not everything is created equal. It's about educating ourselves. Well, it's about experimenting, but most definitely educating ourselves. So as you become more educated and more wise through your own experience, you can make more better informed decisions. So there's really nothing, there aren't too many things out there that it's either good or bad, right? But it's how we use things that's important. So I hope you learned something about me that maybe helped you relate a little bit more to me and my journey. But this is what I'm going to leave you with. What has helped me combat my dysmorphia to where I don't really struggle anymore once this piece of wisdom was shared with me by one of my teachers. And I'm going to leave you with this because I want you to do the same thing. Next time you look in the mirror, I want you to be mindful of where you look. Do you look at yourself in the eyes, or do you look at the places on your body in which you're dissatisfied? And then do you criticize? Because I did. When I looked in the mirror, I saw, oh, look at that cellulite on those hips. Look at, I used to have big boobs, okay? Look at those big saggy boobs. Look at this, look at that. I mean, I would look, primarily me, I always looked at my hips. That was my place that I looked, my hips and my thighs. I would look at that and I would criticize. And this is what I challenge you to do. Next time you look in the mirror, I only want you to look for the sparkle and the twinkle in your eyes. Because this is what I know for sure, is that when you can look deep into your own eyes and see the beauty of your soul, the rest falls into place. And the rest isn't nearly as challenging. So moving forward, starting tonight, starting tomorrow, whether you have to take a tube of lipstick and write it across your mirror, so you remember, I want you to say, look into your eyes, look into my eyes, and only look for the beauty that's within my soul. And know that when I honor and respect the beauty that's within my soul, I won't have the desire to treat myself poorly anymore. I won't have the desire to make decisions that will be self-destructive, and I will lead a more healthy, fulfilling life. Take that mantra with you, friends. Look into your eyes, see the beauty of your own soul. Have a fantastic week. Thank you so much for joining me. Mwah.